How many videos about the Targa Florio do you think I can get away with making? I think this is the third one this year that I've made, but I'm excited to do this. This is the Targa Florio, the great circuit in Sicily, and this is going to be a way different video than my normal thing. This is somewhat of a first look, or at least a first look in a while. This is Assetto Corsa, and this is a native version of the Targa Florio circuit for Assetto Corsa. I mentioned this circuit in my review history of the Targa Florio in sim racing that I did. And it's an interesting one that's been progressing an awful lot lately, and I was going to go for a spin around it this evening and thought I would bring folks along with me, or at least if you're seeing this, I decided to bring you with me to kind of experience and see what's changed around this, because I have not been around this version of the Targa Florio maybe completely ever, although I might have completed a lap at some point, but it's certainly been a very long time, and man, things have really progressed and changed. So if you don't know what we're looking at here, and I'll fly around, this is mostly all going to be done live. No fancy video editing in this one. I'm at the start-finish area outside of Cerda, near the train station, or south of Cerda. I guess north of Cerda, actually. I always think of it as going south, but we're at the start-finish area. This is where the famous start-finish for the Targa Florio is, and you can see it's the 57th Targa Florio. This version of the circuit is based in 1973, and it's made completely from scratch for Assetto Corsa, based off of GPS data and some elevation data done in a survey, I guess from 1988 by the government, and kind of all mashed together with some actual satellite photography. And what it brings you is a very authentic version of the circuit that's so much different than the one that was made for GPL. And it's kind of an homage as well to the GPL version. The creator of this is named Abulzz, and I hope I pronounced that correctly because I'm probably going to say it 100 times during this video, but Abulzz has worked a little bit with some of the folks that made the original Targa Florio for Grand Prix Legends, Sergio Loro, and some others, just to get some information they had on the circuit, but has gone off in a separate direction and worked on their own circuit, and this is absolutely incredible. It is not done by any stretch of the imagination. This is an alpha version of the track. I believe at the time I'm recording this, it's alpha 1 or 0.12. It's a pretty early version, at least by their version numbers, and it's one that is only available through the creator Abulzz Patreon page. So if you do want this version, you do have to participate in the Patreon. You could donate once and then unsubscribe, do whatever you want. It's also available on Race Department, but it's an earlier version, and Abulzz is only posting kind of the major updates on Race Department, doing the incremental monthly updates through their Patreon. I think for a project like this, happy to support somebody in doing it. So thought I'd take you around the circuit and give you my impressions of it, where things are at, what's different about it than the earlier version, what's different about it because it's 1973 and not 1967, and go for a ride generally. It should be fun to do something like this. For driving today, we've got this beauty, the Singer Porsche. This is a car that's been out for quite a while for Assetto Corsa, and if you don't know the Singer Porsches, they're classic Porsche 911s that have been redone by a company called Singer. I believe they're called Singer, and they make them basically a modern car with the older aesthetic and kind of your dream scenario Porsche. They work with the person ordering from them. They're ultra expensive, but they make a very authentic, raw, visceral driving experience in a car that's somewhat modern, at least in its mechanics, but is all of the classic. So this is a version of a Singer Porsche, or the Singer Porsche for Assetto Corsa. It's by a user, Benno Bro, over at Race Department as well. It's been out for a few years, and it's one of the nicest street cars, I think, especially if you like Porsches, and it comes with a bunch of versions of it. I'm driving the 3.8 version here. It's slightly less power. It's plenty of power in my opinion, and is pretty much the perfect car to just go exploring itself. Even got it customized with a Massachusetts license plate, although that's very foreign to Sicily. But we'll jump aboard here, jump in the car, and see what I can do. I've got a keyboard on my legs so that I can actually manipulate the view and stuff as we drive around. But we'll come away from the start-finish area. Big thing missing right now around most of the circuit. I've done a drive up to Cerda at this point. which is not very far up the circuit, so you'll see that here. But no spectators, or maybe just a few spectators here or there. We do have our pit guy over there, so we can say goodbye to him as we leave. But no spectators lining the course. A lack of AI or static vehicles, although there are some that I've seen. You're going to notice that there's texture work that's not finished yet. The textures themselves are a little bland here and there. The author has said that they want to fix that, but look at this. We got a cool sign. I don't know Italian, unfortunately, but Nino written at the bottom. It's pretty cool. A lot of cool details, though, and it's really coming along because the version that's on Race Department, I believe, has been updated somewhat recently so that the buildings and things are there, but even a year ago, this was just a strip of asphalt through the countryside. It was really hard to get any sort of immersion of where you were going or what you were seeing. We'll throttle up a little bit. I'm going to try to go decently quick in spots because the Targa Florio is super long. I might chop this video up a little bit so that the video is not 3 hours, but 72 kilometers around. Takes a good 35 to 40 minutes if you're really hustling around the track, so it can easily take over an hour to do a decent lap if you're just crawling around. We'll come down. So first impressions, if you've done a lot of laps on any other version of the Targa Florio, the road is so different in this one, and it's no disrespect or anything. Look at the mountain there, man. No disrespect or anything to the previous version. The GPL version that every other version of this track is based on, the one for R Factor and GTR2 and R Factor 2, they were working with an engine where you're manually creating the track based off maps and photographs. This can be much more accurate with the GPS data and map information. Just gives the road a lot more character to it. Now, again, it's 1973 and not 67 like the GPL version is, so there are some major differences in the track, and I know of one, I'm sure we'll spot a couple others along the way, where the road was just different. But the GPL version is not going to help you too much here. I've found, at least in my short running around this circuit, that I don't really know where I'm going a lot of the time. The road just looks so different in spots. The scenery, obviously, but just the bumps and things in the road. There's some corners where were slight bends on the other version and vice versa. So it's just a different way to experience the track and is really, really nice. All right, so we'll come down here. They've gotten a lot of the signs in place, which is great to see. A lot of the mile markers and all of that, which are super helpful and kind of essential to knowing at all where you're going around a track like this. And a lot of the vegetation and bushes using the custom shader patch and everything with the grass to add a lot of detail, but that's not just trivial to add in. You gotta work the right materials into your surface and all of that. A rev limiter, luckily, on this car. It's a really, really nice car to drive and one I recommend. Or maybe sat up a little high in the cockpit, but give you a nice view. Shooting this in ultra wide today to really show you the whole scenery and everything. It's a really beautiful track, even in its alpha state here. And with the double precision physics now that exist because of custom shader patch, you don't get any of that rattling or shaking in the force feedback or anything. It actually feels quite nice. I still really like how Assetto Corsa drives overall, especially in a car like this. It's very believable, authentic, nice feeling. Oh, I got a big area to the right here. We can cut that maybe. Probably not on race day with all the spectators there. Gives you an impression a little bit of driving the circuit on a practice day. The Targa Florio had somewhat open practice days from what I understand, especially in the earlier days, but even up through into the 70s when this event was finished, and 73 was the last year as the World Championship event. But the practice days, the circuit, the road, it's just a road, open to the public in a lot of spots, and so you couldn't really commit lines. We got some nice cars parked off the side there, little Abarths. But you couldn't commit your lines. You had to avoid any kind of pedestrians and cars and things, so definitely going through the cities, you have to go slow. So the dead-end feeling of not a lot around maybe is a little more like a practice day. We'll come up. I recognize this part as a curve here, but some of the curves go uphill and downhill where they don't on the other version. nice appreciation for the circuit. It's a little more flowing in spots too, at least from what I can remember. We'll see. This run up to Cerda is one of the easier parts now, at least on the other version. I've just done it so many times, but here we go. Coming up to Cerda. So Cerda is the first town or city, however you'd call it, that you come across, and the entry to it. So this is where I stopped before I decided to record this. We got the sign to enter the village, the town. It's very uphill. This is so different looking than it is in the 67 version. A lot of things to hit. First of all, a lot of objects you could, walls and sharp curbs and things. Go past the little town square there and hop onto the main drag. This is a nice high-speed run. A lot of photographs and iconic imagery and things from this stretch through the buildings. But really nice detail. This was all untextured as of fairly recently, so all the textures have been done for this. I'll actually pull the car over up here. We'll look around for a second. I can't do this everywhere because, again, it's going to take about 3 hours to drive around here, but we'll jump out of the car for a second. A lot of signage and things, which is really cool to see. I'm sure there's a lot of photographs from the 73 race that could help you know what the signs and things are supposed to be. Look down the main drag here. I do wish I knew Italian a little bit because I could help to understand what some of these signs are. But yeah, it'll be nice when this is all populated with folks at those barriers and a lot of objects and things. The more objects, the higher sense of speed you're going to have rocketing down this type of street. Just a lot of detail in this, which, man, to do a full 72 kilometer route in this type of detail, I'm sure towards the end of the lap, there's still some areas that need a lot of texturing and things, but this is looking very, very nice and coming along quite well. We'll jump up and take a look at the village. It's pretty much the immediate surroundings of the circuit, but you saw as I was driving through there, you don't really need a ton of buildings. Of course, it'd be cool if everything had buildings on all these areas that should, but you're never going to see that while you're driving. And on a circuit this big, you need all of the performance. But look at the mountain there. Oh, man. Mixed with the atmosphere conditions and things you can have in Assetto Corsa. They didn't race this track at night, but they certainly did some practice laps at dawn and in the dusk when it was a little less populated. So you could have some really fun times coming around this with some headlights and in the rain, although it didn't rain here too much. In 66, it did rain during the race. So you could experience that pretty authentically. Very, very excited for this. All right, so pull away here. We'll leave Cerda behind and work our way now. We'll jump into the hills themselves. It's pretty pedestrian inclines and things up to this point. Just a little bit more until we get to the hairpin and really start heading uphill. Although the whole way we've been heading up the side of the mountain somewhat. So a little village here. I'm not exactly sure where it is. Maybe we'll see more houses and things in this version, but Contrada Spinizanta, if I pronounce it correctly, is up here towards the hairpin. Might be more of like a villa or small town. But some of these houses, I guess, comprise what is known as Contrada Spinizanta. We've got a couple tight left-handers. Ooh, and a nice sign. Love all the road signs and things. Yeah, we're going to take the left to Caltavetoro. The road splits off here. Things that are actually really hard to do in GPL's engine is have diverging roads and things like that. Pretty impressive how they actually are able to do it, but this, you can obviously have paths and things that join onto the track a bit better. And now we'll start heading up the hill. So this is going to be the long run all the way up to Caltavetoro through the Sclafani Bagni section. And really nice views as you come up through here on the circuit. We got some guardrails that were definitely not there in the 67 version. And that's more authentic changes. That's not just the circuit itself. It's just the roads were improved over time. I'm trying to do my best to not hit anything here, but it's always a challenge doing a lap around the Targa Florio. Seems like there's quite a few houses in this area too, and I would imagine between 67 and 73 that there would have been probably a lot more buildings and things built. I know these roads were very problematic to keep very nice and race-worthy. How's the road go here? Oh, this looks so different. This is that fast flick to the right that you jump over the hill here. Man, totally didn't know where I was for a second. These roads were always problematic, and these days, although most of these roads exist, a lot of them, at least as of fairly recently, were closed off to the public just because there have been landslides and things that washed out the road and just weren't safe for travel. You saw a lot of patchwork, especially in the 60s. The 67 version for Grand Prix Legends features quite a bit of road patchwork, which is all taken from photographs and things to be pretty authentic. But a lot of bumps in that. Road surface here is very detailed. Not exactly sure how detailed they're able to make it. Obviously the elevations and cambers and things will probably be pretty good, but as for bumps, not sure the GPS data is accurate enough for that, so there might be watching some onboard footage, Vic Elford and things blasting around just to get an idea for what that was like. A nice little stretch, get our singer up to speed a bit. It's gonna be a pretty slow run, but it's sometimes really nice just to go for a bit of a drive. I love this car so much. It, especially at the limit, feels very, very good. You can get the car sliding around a bit. For a Porsche, it's got some of those traits. You know, don't lift off the throttle quickly in a braking zone, or else you're going to be spinning around. Come by this stone wall. A lot of stone walls here. Bit of a lockup on the brakes. Get some forested sections here, a lot of custom trees. I mean, the scenery itself on its own, I actually really like the look. I think if you jump from another circuit, some of the really beautiful tracks, some of Fat Alfie's things, it does look a little washed out here, and I believe the intention is to update some of these textures with time and get a lot more specific with the textures, but I think it honestly looks good enough now. I wouldn't be disappointed in the end if it never changed from this, but any additional detail is always welcome. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going at all on this version. It's so different from the other version, just in scenery and all the cues that you have to just know a little bit of where you are, because this track is so long, you never really learn it. It's one of the fun things about it. It's kind of that feeling for any of you that have conquered the Nordschleife and have just done endless laps there. If you remember back your first month, few weeks with that track, you didn't know where you were going some of the times and had to be tentative on the throttle, or you just run off the track and things. You never really learned this one. I've spent probably a couple hundred hours here by now, and I just really don't know where I'm going half the time. Even on the GPL version, I know it, but I really don't. You second guess yourself, especially if you're trying to keep the car on the road to do a race or something. And yeah, we got a whole new version here to try to conquer, but just some really nice driving for sure. Nice big rest area to the right there. Long right-hander, understeer a bit in the middle of it. So this section we flattened out a bit, and we're going across a ridge. I'm gonna keep continuing like this until we'll start heading downhill actually a bit again. Get to the Sclafani Bagni hairpins, or at least that's what I've called them. From what I can tell, very few corners had any sort of name on this track, on this circuit. There's 800 some odd turns, or more than 700 turns on it, so impossible to name them all. And I think you would probably just refer to sections of the course by where it's close to. So I've dubbed those hairpins the Sclafani Bagni. Another trick to everything too is really pay attention to the road signs. They do their job. They really tell you what's coming up. There's a few different ones. The one we just passed there, if you could see it, tells you there's somewhat of a chicane. Usually doesn't mean there's a severe corner, but probably a dab of the brakes, lift of the throttle. You'll see the hairpin signs, which are always a nice thing to know about. A few of them, though, are falsely placed, at least to racing speeds. But we get another kind of slow corner chicane type deal. cross a little bridge here. Yeah, a lot more infrastructure. I'm seeing just a lot more guardrails than I know were here in the 60s. So by the 70s, they'd started adding quite a few guardrails. Past the red hut. This is a long, like, triple right-hander, although it's much more of a progressive corner in this version. Across a bridge here. Now we get to one of the tightest. We got a road narrow sign there. This might be the tightest part of the whole lap. Not as bumpy as it is in GPL through here. I'll put it in first gear. Very short first gear. We'll see how this all works out on the highway at the end of the lap. Not sure what my top speed is gearing right now. Always make sure to put a full tank of fuel in your car too if you're going to do some laps here. It's kind of the famous mistake that myself and many have done a lot of times. You get to Cultivatore or Collesano in the lap and you run out of fuel. You need quite a lot of fuel to do laps at the Targa Florio in most cars, and most cars' default fuel loads are not a full lap worth of fuel. All right, we'll rush downhill now. Some fast S's. This looks a little more familiar to the GPL version. We can see the roadway ahead. That's one thing as well. We'll come to one of the first hairpins. Down to first gear. You can see so much further in the distance, and it's very well aligned, obviously, to the scenery. The version floating around out there of the GPL Targa Florio converted to Assetto Corsa, the land structure they tried to import, it just doesn't line up for many reasons, and so it's not the best appearance. But this, you can just see how the road's weaving around the land. Very, very nice to see. Feels a little less like you're racing in a bubble and you're truly going somewhere. You can see a point in the distance and know that you'll be over there in a short amount of time. All right, so we get through the hairpins there. We'll come up to another set, actually. We've got a little chicane here. Down to second gear. Misjudged it. There's another little bump there, and then we get to the chicanes, or the hairpins, rather. Very short first gear, almost over-rev the car. Driving like I just got the Singer from the dealership. Keep it in second for most of it. It's got enough torque anyway. So here we go. And I believe that might be Sclafani Bagni sitting up on the hill there, although I don't know that for certain. I know this is, I believe, where the circuit used to go straight. That might be a Cultivatore if I'm misremembering, but it used to go a completely different direction. Of course, in the early days of the Targa Florios, that's the really tight one there, and we'll come up around here, and this is where we have the diverging road. At least I thought it was. In the GPL version, I think that's where the road diverts off. Maybe it's after this right-hander. There we go. So this is where the road diverts off, although it's much tighter, but goes to Sclafani Bagni there. We'll continue up the hill. But in the early days of the Targa Florio, the race went around the full circumference of Sicily, which is nuts. It was scaled back to some crazy 100-plus kilometer version at some stage, and pared down to this short track, the Piccolo circuit. If you believe it, the 72-kilometer short circuit. This is the one most folks know. Come through in a big dip here. We'll bottom out a bit. This is the one they raced for many, many years. 73, the last year, it was a World Sports Car event, which honestly surprised it lasted that long. It's mind-blowing that they even raced this in the late 60s, even in the 50s, to be honest. Very much the flavor of the Mille Miglia. I think that's why it was, continued to be so loved and got ultra popular in its final few years, which played into its demise. The massive spectator crowds just was not safe. There were some accidents involving spectators and drivers, of course. Pass another exit here. Where does this go? So that's Sclafani Bagni exit. Maybe they both are. I didn't look at the sign for the last one. We'll continue on to Cultivatore. A little burnout there in the Porsche. So the circuit itself, I don't believe has AI, although I haven't tested them. I believe I read somewhere that it doesn't have AI lines yet. It would be a pretty massive effort to try to record an AI line around here with any sort of reasonable pace. But hopefully at some point they'll do that. It also comes with some alternate versions, which are very helpful for learning it. I don't like the word or the phrase of being a purist, but I can't bring myself to try to learn this track in sections. I really want to learn it like they actually did, but you can absolutely increase your time, or decrease the time really, in learning the track by using the rally stage versions that they have of this. It comes with the track, at least from the Patreon version, and it's broken into 5 sections that you can start each one separately. So you can just kind of do section 3 over and over again until you get it, and then do section 5, and it's in more manageable chunks. I think they're like 15 kilometers each. That would be a great way to really learn the circuit quite quickly, because if you do what I did and try to always start at the start-finish, you're going to be doing that first section a lot, and you'll get good at it, and then you'll get up here and realize you don't know where you're going. There's nothing worse than crashing 25 minutes into a lap and damaging the car, but part of the fun in driving it. So we're going through some more switchbacks. What do we got on that building? A NOS. All right. We'll continue up the hill. So now we'll come over, and you can see up on the hill some houses there, and I believe that is Cultivatore, which is kind of the southernly most point. We've been heading south this whole time up the ridge, and I think this is where the track continued on straight a bit once we get up here, but we'll come across the bridge that snuck up on me. A bunch of little paths, rally stages coming off the sides of this. We'll head up the hill, and there's a little bit of a diverging intersection right up here. You can see. There we go. We got some signs so we know where to go. But yeah, I believe in the early part of the century, the road actually continued on straight there, the course itself, and that's where it went on to do the much larger loop. But we'll take a left here and continue on. And I mean, just getting a quick view of the scenery and stuff, I mean, come on. It's so beautiful. You can see the road way off in the distance there, and that's where we were. We're actually traversing this map. We just went through all of this twisty stuff. It's already really, really cool. It's gonna be amazing when it's done someday. I'm sure it'll never really be done. You can always add some more detail. Some great sky artifacts there. Thank you. Assetto Corsa, but yeah, you can always do a bit more. But we've got, that might be Cerda that we were at earlier. Not sure though. But yeah, it's very, very, very beautiful sim and track. And I think Assetto Corsa is a nice sim to have this circuit in, although I really like the version that's in R Factor 2, and I actually debated doing a video very similar to this for R Factor 2. But although that track's impressive and I'll absolutely get around to it at some point, you know, this being a completely different version, it's a lot of fun to explore. We'll head downhill now. This is pretty steep downhill, so we changed roads as well, and we're headed to Borgo Eras by way all the way to Collesano. It's quite a journey to get there. This part of the track on the other version is probably one of my worst sections, though there's a couple sections I know I'm just not familiar enough with yet. But this section has some really fast downhill parts that can definitely catch you out. We'll try our best here. I've not hit anything too hard yet, or much at all with the old Singer here. I might have damage on too, which is probably a bad idea for a video like this. Come around some rocks here. This is really cool. Rock features and things. I don't know if I saw stuff like that. There are some kind of pictures of rock walls and things on the GPL version, but that's neat to have. I mean, Sicily is one of those places that I've unfortunately never been. I've been to other places in Italy, and I mean, the country itself is beautiful. I know Sicily is always talked about as being such a beautiful landscape and scenery and things, and so being able to drive through it on a sunny day in a Porsche, although this is a simulation of it, just gives you a little bit of a taste of how epic this would be, and just seeing the road and things in the distance, it's so nice. got the big steering wheel rim hooked up to the Fanatec. Just give you a nice feeling. I believe it's the same diameter as a Porsche wheel too, so it gives a really good feeling of driving the car. H pattern, of course. Another thing that's nice with the Singer too, all the gauges on the dashwork, the clock right to the right of my hands there, or virtual hands, is actual working. So we're about 9:45 in the morning, driving around here, and you can't see it, but the odometer underneath the steering wheel there actually works as well with CSP, so you can see how many miles you've driven in this exact car. Alright, we'll come down here. I believe this is somewhat of a hairpin. So the scenery itself through here, I mean, there's not a lot of scenery outside of natural vegetation and things to do, but I would say this is probably a section where they're probably planning on doing more work. The wall looks a little generic right now. There's bushes and trees and things, but it could obviously use some passes for rocks and all that, but even in its current state, and look at the hairpins and things in the distance down there. Try to keep my eyes on the road, but look at them. It just looks really, really nice. Nerding out a bit at the Targa Florio, but to me this is a lot of what sim racing, sim driving, whatever you want to call it's about, experiencing things that you simply cannot do anymore. You can go to Sicily and drive on some of these roads, but probably not going to be doing that in a high-end Porsche, and you can't drive this full loop and you can't use the whole road. It would be irresponsible to do. Probably not possible in a lot of places, so it's an awesome thing to challenge yourself to try to learn something like this. Is a fun project, and I still got a lot of work to do. Alright, so we're coming down the hill. I'm trying to understand where we are. I think we're going to come to more hairpins. Yeah, and this one sneaks up on you in the GPL version. It's a little more obvious here with the big checkerboard sign, but I believe we're coming to the area that is different. One of the areas that's actually different routing for the 73 version. If you see ahead, we can just start to see it now. There is a huge highway, which kind of takes you out of it a little bit. There's beautiful roads here, and we have a massive interstate highway, or whatever they would call them in Italy, and that was added sometime in the early 70s, or right around this time period, and so they had to change the route slightly. We don't go on the highway, thankfully. You can see it now. Big overpass bridge. We're going to scoot under it. Down to second gear here and come over this bridge. I believe this is the Grande River area. We'll scoot up the other side. Yeah, huge overpass, and just a sign of what was to come. There's a lot of infrastructure being built through here. Luckily, we can still drive these natural roads up the side of the mountain. Right, we're going to come into more of a forested section, if I'm not mistaken. Speed might be my highest speed yet. Alright, we'll come down here to yeah, here we go. So this is an interesting area. Sweep to the right, much fewer trees than in the Grand Prix Legends version, but it tightens up quite a bit here, even tighter in this version, and we'll wrap around a few hairpins to get up the hill. And through this section, I believe we're just about halfway around the lap, if you can believe it. It's a very long lap here, but just about halfway through. There's no more mile markers, it seems, through here, so something you'd obviously have in the finished version to tell exactly where you are, but yeah, right around here. Mile markers themselves only mark the road you're on and the location on that road, so they're not going to tell you the lap itself where you are. Now we'll work our way uphill again. signs though. So the road signs are still through here, and it seems like Abulzz has pretty much finished all of the road. There's wall placements, there's trees. There's probably just some texture work to do, and the more details the better, but keep things performant as well. It performs pretty well. Hopefully the video is going to come out nice. It's very tight here. Right-hander. Wasn't really expecting that. We'll see where we're going though. Oh, we get the last hairpin here. Man, it's very exposed up here compared to what I'm used to. Some great shots here coming out of this corner of some of the cars in the 50s that I've found, the Testarosas. And now we'll head up. All right, that was the final hairpin. There was one more set. But yeah, it is very performant. I'm able to get a decent frame rate the whole way. There's no real stuttering or anything in my play, so if you see anything, it's in the video itself, which is an accomplishment for a circuit this big. To make sure it loads correctly, and testament to all the work that's being done to keep Assetto Corsa relevant as well. For Assetto Corsa as well, there's some pretty good sports cars from the early 70s. There's some official ones with the 917Ks and things that you can drive around here, but there's also some third-party Lolas, and I think there's a few Ferraris and things. Anything red. Well, I'm driving a Porsche. They were very successful here. Porsche or Ferrari, Maserati, those are all at home. Pick your favorite sports car. Even modern stuff, although it's not necessarily. I'm driving somewhat of a modern car, but a modern car with a historic take. You can really drive anything around here. It's a great circuit, I would say, to understand what a car can do. You're going to encounter pretty much any condition here. Alright, we'll come around. We'll get to the top of this hill. There's a few tricky corners on this section, specifically on the Grand Prix Legends one, where it'll spit you out right next to a guardrail and things. Pretty much wall on one side, guardrail on the other, or a hill. So the road itself is fairly well contained. But once we crest this hill, we'll go down the other side and go through the village of Borgo Eras. We'll see what that looks like in this version. Very insignificant in the Grand Prix Legends version. There's a farmhouse or two, some fields. But that might have been how it was in 67. I don't know what it looked like in 73. Come to the top of the hill here, very tight hairpin there. You can see some houses up in the distance there. That might be Borgo Eras. I'm looking at my map just to see. Wouldn't be surprised if that's it, actually. I know there's a few of these towns placed out here. I think some of them are almost planned villages, if I'm not mistaken. Rush down the hill here. Second gear. Now we'll work through another short section before Collesano, which is really the second main town that you go through. You go through three villages, three towns with the buildings whizzing by on each side. And Collesano might be the most iconic one. It's got the hairpin in it that you always see in photographs. And in reading for the update, I believe Abulzz was updating a second town with all of the textures and things. And I don't remember if it was Collesano or Campo Felice, which is the final town, but we'll see as we get there. Another trick, definitely not one that I invented, but something to learn a track like this and try to get some lap times down. My first goal with learning a circuit like this would simply be to make it around. Go this slow, go slower than this. And just try to make a lap, because you're never going to, in my opinion, never really going to learn how to do it if you crash out everywhere. You treat the car like it's a real car, and you wouldn't want to scratch it. Might be more fun for some to just go flying into corners and then tune it down. I've always found it more rewarding to make it a lap. You know it's slow, you're never going to compete at that speed, but get around the track and then tune it up where you can. In the first place, I would say, to pick it up is simply what you can see. If you don't know what's around the bend, go slow. But if you see a long stretch of road in front of you, that you know the curves, because you can see them, that's an opportunity. Here we go, an opportunity to go fast. Even though I don't know what's around this next corner, I can go fast right there, and then I can jump on the brakes. Might be obvious to some, but it's a great way to pick up some lap time, and you'll slowly start remembering sections. And when you're confident you know what's around the next corner because you've done it before, go fast there, but then slow down for the next corner if you don't know, what's happening over there. And that would be the methodology I'd learn a track. It's what I tried to do to learn this track. I took some notes as well, some of the different roads. One of the reasons why it's nice to learn the towns you're going by is it gives you something to contextualize where you are, or else it's just a series of corners and trees and things. Grand Prix Legends version I think is going to be easier to learn for now, just because it does have more cars on the edges of the track and spectators and things that you can recognize and then spot where you are. This version, it's still a little bare bones here through the woods, but it's a great, beautiful scenery with the mountains and everything and the trees. But it is, a little samey just because there isn't a lot of special objects and things just yet. Alright, we'll rush downhill. Should be getting close to Collesano, and one thing you can see there off to the left is the ocean starting to peek into view, which we'll be getting to. It's crazy to think we'll drive all the way down there once we go through Collesano. Oh, and we can just see it in front, so it looks like Collesano still doesn't have any textures. So it must be Campo Felice that they've gone and textured. We'll drive through slow and just check out the architecture, because making all these 3D buildings is not insignificant. But here we go into Collesano, and the layout of the village itself, I found it to be somewhat similar in my previous run-throughs, but now we've got buildings here, which makes it so much better. But yeah, still a lot of work to do through here. Make sure we don't take a wrong turn. There are invisible walls, I believe they said 6 meters off the track on each side in most areas that extend it in certain spots, but you can count on there being invisible walls if you try to go down side streets and things. But here we go. We'll come up to the famous hairpin. We'll actually stop here and just take a little peek around the town. But there's so many photographs done of this hairpin and the crowds and everything. Not going to get the same impression here because there's no graffiti and all of that there is in real life, but we'll jump out. You always see photographs from this angle somewhat of cars going around it, and there's graffiti on the wall saying, Nino and Ferrari and all that fun stuff. And I saw an image recently of this area, somewhat recently in the 2020s, and it looks very similar still. So you could definitely go here and see a little bit of the Targa Florio track. Yeah, got some nice alleyways and things. This will look so nice when it's all textured up. This is one of those real mountain villages too, just up in the hills. Some nice gardens here. This looks really nice. A lot of detail, a lot of objects to hit too. That's one thing that I think will be pretty tricky about this. There's just a lot of sharp objects and things. We got stairs here. Be easy to run wide and you're not coming back after an accident with those. Nice tree-lined avenue down the hill. And then more buildings and things. We'll jump out of the town a little bit so we can see the ocean down there. And we'll be headed there next. But here's our village of Collesano up in the hills. This one's much more modeled than Cerda was. It looks like they would extend over here too, but we won't need that while we're driving. But for this section, you do drive through a substantial amount of the town, so it's good to have it all modeled. We'll jump back in our Porsche and continue down the hill. Alright. Turn turn the wheel there and get ourselves moving. So this part, it still winds a bit. We'll be in the town of Collesano itself for a few more straightaways and corners. You do pass a gas station on the exit. Interesting to see if that's modeled, because there's the gas station back in Cerda. And I do remember in the Grand Prix Legends version, there is curbing through here that you have to watch out for. Yeah, on the right there, I believe, is where the gas station will be. So, not there yet. But you can see all the structures and everything being placed. So it's coming along really nice. And it'll just be, once the textures are there, it'll look very similar to Cerda and the state that's in, which is pretty far along. All right, we'll peel away. Then we'll come to probably my worst section of the track. And if you watched the full race I did here for the 67 or 66 season that I'm doing in GTR2, yeah, this section of it is just really difficult. I didn't really have any big issues through here. I think I ran wide on one lap or scrubbed the barrier or something, but it's just one of the sections. It's probably the section I've gone through the least. Just always starting at the start-finish section if you crash out or don't have enough time to do a full lap. And it's very samey in the Grand Prix Legends version. Not because it's poorly modeled, it's just, I think that's what this section is. You're working downhill through switchbacks. Some of them are tight, some of them aren't. And it just gets really tricky to know which ones you can go fast through. So this is definitely the part I need to learn the most on any version of the Targa Florio. But it is a nice part of the track. I do like the rush downhill, and especially in this version, we'll get to watch the ocean just get closer and closer and closer. One of the things the Grand Prix Legends version had to do is the skybox in Grand Prix Legends can only be so big. Because the distant scenery itself doesn't draw super far out. If they had drawn the ocean on the skybox that you see in the way distance, you would always see the ocean in very odd parts of the track. So they actually had to make two different skyboxes that at some point you switch between. And it's very, very well hidden. You would never notice it just driving a lap. But for the first part of this downhill rush, you don't see the ocean at all in the GPL version, which is pretty accurate. You can barely see it there. But once you get to the bottom, suddenly you come around a corner and there it is. And it's just so, makes you feel good because you know you're very close to the end, or at least to where the lap gets easier for a second. Because we'll be joining up with a highway right at the end of the lap to do a long blast down. Interested to see what it looks like too in this version. I don't know if I've ever done the full lap. I think I've been about that far at least, because I remember seeing earlier versions of Collesano. Certainly come a long way though. The whole track here has just come along really nicely in the past 3 years overall, and I'm really eager to see what Abulzz is able to do with it to get it finished, or in a more finished state. Just keep adding the textures and the details and things, and it'll be like it's 1973 in no time. Go to the right here. Almost tricked me out with that road up the hill to the left. Got another road shooting off here. Yeah, there's a few corners that if you're really trying to hustle through, they're just a bit tighter. If it was a rally, you'd want a Titan's call on them. This might be one of those. Easy to run wide though. We've got guardrails in this version though, so we won't go careening down the hill, which is always good. We're actually getting down the hill pretty quick. So this will bring us to Campo Felice, which is the final town you go through. Also got some really iconic scenes in it as well, a nice cathedral and things. I don't know how developed it is in this version, but it's right against the ocean as well, which just makes it look very, very cool with the turquoise blue water and all that. There's nice trees and everything down here, nice and shaded. You get the dynamic shadows in Assetto Corsa, which isn't something you can get in Grand Prix Legends. Anytime you see shadows in Grand Prix Legends, they're added manually on the textures themselves, which makes them really impressive when it's done well. Took a screenshot there by accident. That's what you get for having a keyboard on your lap. around. Getting close now. Road starts to straighten out a little bit, but it still has a couple gotcha corners as you get to the bottom. It's an interesting intersection. Nice hay bales, just to make sure you know not to go that way. I'm sure there'll be spectators and things on those roads in the final version. Very, very turquoise blue. It looks nice. I think it looks perfect for the area. I've never actually been here, but based on photographs and things, that's what the ocean should look like here. Come around. I believe this is about where you start seeing the ocean in the Grand Prix Legends version, if I'm not mistaken. Going to be a bit tighter than it was, but a nice leisurely drive. If you do want to see racing around here, if you've made it this far, you obviously don't mind the slow driving, but I did do a race here, like I mentioned, and I want to do more in the future. It would be great to, I know there's a random leagues here and there. We'll do races around here in the Grand Prix Legends version and things. I think it'd be really fun. I think the R Factor 2 version might be a great one to stage some racing on, just because R Factor 2 is a little bit better with online racing as well. But it would be fun to get a bunch of Targa Meisters or Targa Masters around and see how well you fare. I'm sure I'm nowhere near the pace of some of the really experienced, but it'd be fun to attempt. Look forward. We've got an interesting bridge spanning a big valley there. I've never seen that, so that must be something that was built. And here we go, Campo Felice, and it looks like it has textures, which is awesome. Get to see a little bit of what the town looks like. There we go, Campo Felice. So we'll come in. This looks great. It looks like there's the building textures, but no like signs and things, at least up here. But it already just feels right. Come down. We got a little chicane type intersection here. We'll go to the left. We'll stop towards the end of the town and zoom around a bit and take a look at it as well. We'll come around and we'll come up to where the cathedral is, and I don't know if the cathedral's in. I thought I saw a note that the church itself isn't done yet. We'll come up to the hairpin where it would be. Yeah, this is where it would be, I believe. And not there just yet. But look at this. Nice ocean view with some trees. I don't want to pull too far off the road because I don't know if we're able to. And we get the view of the mountain and everything. So that's the mountain that's back at Cerda where we started, and we'll be headed there. But we'll be able to go down a highway, and you can actually see a train. Let's see if I can jump out of the car. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. You should be able to see it. A train zooming off. Man, I didn't know there was a train. That's so cool. That'll be really neat to see as you're zooming down the highway. We have the ocean there. And look back towards the town itself. So if I jump up. So yeah, here's the town. Oh, and we do have the cathedral, so I missed it. But here it is. I show this at the start of the video I did about the history of this track for sim racing. But so it's in there. Custom built. So obviously a little more texture work to be done, but we've got the house colors and things, which I think this is some of the most recently added parts of the scenery. So I mean, the whole track has buildings, it has trees and vegetation, it's got a nice road surface, it's totally drivable and good fun to have around. It's only going to get better from here, over the coming months and probably years as it will take to finish a track like this. But impressive work thus far to put this all together. So we'll go down, we'll take the jump down to the highway. The Buonfanello Strait is what it's called, I believe. That actually has a real name. I'm trying not to bin it here right at the end of the lap, which is always a treat when it happens. Yeah, a few hairpins and things. We'll work down the hill pretty sharply. This will dump us out onto a highway. or as much of a highway as we would have had in the 60s. Of course, by this time we've already seen there's a few bigger highways. But it's such a nice, I really like it as a feature of the course to have such a fast road. Here it is. Oh, and the merge is even cooler in this version. Go fast here, you kind of bottom out because you're at the bottom of the hill, and then you got this kink, which is tricky in the Grand Prix Legends version. I don't know how tight it is here. Looks tighter. That'll spit you out into the highway proper, and then you have this long, fast road. We'll actually get up to some speed here. Hopefully won't hate my decision on that. But you can imagine, too, some cars parked on the sides here and there, spectators at the intersections. It's just a long, straight highway. It's going to bring us through the town as well of Buonfinello. We can see the train tracks there on the right. I hope we pass the train. That would be cool to see. Revving it out in 5th gear. It's not quite long enough gears, but we're jumping along 235 Ks. You can see we got some structures and things up here. I'll slow down a bit because I don't know what's coming ahead. Interesting, like green overpass or something. Huh, I've never seen something like that. Don't know what that would be for. Might be one of those land bridges or something, not sure. Definitely a highway overpass. Here we go, there's another one here. So a bunch of highway overpasses that weren't there in the 60s we have now. Got some extra entrance and exit lanes on this road itself. We'll come up, I believe this is Buonfinello, the village. It's another one of those really small villages, just a couple of buildings on the side of the highway, but it does signify a very difficult Mosta kink-like chicane. We'll slow down plenty for it because I'm not on any sort of hot lap, but this is so tricky, and right at the end of the lap too, to be high speed. You can make up a lot of time through here, but not something that you want to take any risks on. Much curvier in this version too. There we go, straightens out again for a minute, and then we'll head into the last part of the lap, which will bring us by the train station and everything and back to the start finish. So gently to the left, we'll come up here, back down to 4th gear. Lazy right-hander, and now see the guardrails, you know, I don't want you to go off there, so maybe slow down a little bit. At this pit area here, well, in the Grand Prix Legends version, there's actually quite a bit of extra tarmac on the inside that you can use to kind of cut that corner. Either that or it's the next corner. Just to check it out. I think it was that one. So I hope throughout this, my interpretation of this does not come across as talking negatively about the Grand Prix Legends version at all, because everything I wanted to say about that version and how amazing it is that it was ever built, and it's really an inspiration for a project like this, and it's still so much fun to drive. So it's just nice to see another version of it. It will certainly never remove the fact that the team was able to build this for such an old sim, really, at that point, and able to pull it off. A 75-kilometer circuit, 72 kilometers. All right, so we'll come here. Some more corners, of course. Got to make up the full 770 something that there are on the lap. Just throw a few more in right at the end. Almost got confused there about where the road was going. Some guardrails, and we'll come up to a left-hander. I don't think this is it yet. Well, it might be. Yeah, I guess that is. So this will drop us down, yeah, a little straightaway. So on the right here, this is where the pit complex is in all of the other versions. In the Grand Prix Legends version, it's actually at the Cerda train station, which might have been where they had teams hang out. I'll actually get out here. But here's where the pits are in every other version of the course, and I think it's simply because there's just not enough space at the actual start-finish line. But when you load up the track in R-Factor 2 or Grand Prix Legends or wherever, you come out, this is like dirt, and you come out here and merge onto the road ahead. We got the train tracks. Do we have a train? I would love to see the train up close. But I don't think we've got one coming, unfortunately, or maybe it doesn't come this far. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful road circuit. We can see up there the start finish. I'll drive over there in a second. Get the nice mountain as well. Get the moon in the sky. It's just a great, just the atmospheric effects and things, and Assetto Corsa just let you really experience the area. I think this is one of the nicest parts about Assetto Corsa, the long tracks. Now that we can actually really have them with good physics as well. We'll jump straight and we'll head over to the start finish to end the lap. And so if you stuck with me this far, I don't know how much I'll cut during the video or if I'll leave it relatively full, but I hope you enjoyed the look at the Targa Florio by Abulzz in the Singer Porsche here. Excited to see where this goes over the next couple years. I hope a few more folks check it out. If you want to get this exact version, you can sign up for the Patreon, even for just a month. Or it's pretty cheap though, so you can continue to get the updates and all that, and help give a little back to somebody that's really passionate about what they're doing and building a very, very nice facility and circuit to race on. So hope you enjoyed that very informal first look type video of the Targa Florio 73 for Assetto Corsa. But thank you for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see y'all again next time.